I'm going to walk through the creation of the GUI for this blockchain project. I have given you in the specification some suggested data that would be held in an array, and I'm going to show you here how I did it. You are not required to build it exactly, and actually I don't want you to build it exactly the way I built it. Add your own personality to your labels, and there may be some unnecessary labels here. The way I got this list of labels and strings to go in them that you see I put in a string array from the description of the assignment here, saying I'm requiring you to store your information going into a block in an array. And here is the items I'm asking you to put in the array, and etc. means you can add other items. So from that list, I just basically took that, and from that I constructed a string array. And this string array is going to be the data labels that will appear in my GUI. And you see how when I have that array, as I'm building my screen, what's going to happen here as I build the screen, I'm adding a label that just says enter new blockchain data here. That's this label here. And then in a loop, I'm creating a label whose name goes exactly with the entered string in that data labels array. And I'm also creating a text field. That's what this is, a text field. Add another label, add another text field. Another label, text field. Label text field, label text field, label text field. And then I'm creating a button, and when the button is clicked, it will store the data, and when it stores it, it should be adding data. And you see, because I have not entered anything into any of these text fields, I'm getting empty data being added. There's going to be some error checking needed, or if it's blank, to maybe put a blank string in the array. And that array of data is what's being displayed here. Or this is a debug line explaining what that array of data is going to look like. Okay, so right now we're only thinking about how the GUI is built, and we'll start taking a look at what happens in the block. I'll have another video just explaining how I built my block, and I'm leaving some code out that is for you to add or fix. Alright, so let's take a look now how we built this GUI. This is my main blockchain, the main that has at the bottom here a main method, and it builds, I'm calling it me, a new main blockchain, which is my main class. And then to create my GUI, I just say my GUI, so some name, GUI main, is me.new of my GUI. Okay, now zipping back to the top on how that GUI was built, let's walk through one by one how I built my GUI. As I'm defining my GUI, I'm defining a title for it. This label will be is created in the construction of my GUI that extends a JFrame. It simply has some string in there. And as I'm creating labels, I'm going to be creating labels with these string names. Because I'm going to be needing to access the text fields that will be holding data that the user has typed in, I'm creating an array of JTextField objects, and the array has a length of just the same length as how many labels I have. So see how it's, if ever I add a label or remove a label, my text field array will have a length that matches exactly the number of data labels I have. So this arrangement assumes that every text field that will hold some data has an accompanying string data label. I'm going to have those appear on the left, as you see in my GUI here. The labels will appear on our left, and when I add the text field, it will appear on the right. And because of this arrangement, I'm going to be wanting to use a grid layout of 2 columns, 1, 2, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 rows. In order to get the data and the labels to line up this way, this is a label, this is a blank label, label text field, and then down here a button. This is never added. So the button is stored in this grid element here. So labels to match every text field. Here's a place to store that button, because I'm going to be adding an action listener to it. Here's the container to which I will be adding all my graphical elements. Okay, so now the constructor for this my GUI that extends a JFrame. First thing I do is set the frame of my GUI to be a 400 by 300. Adjust that to your taste. There's much more you can do at adding colors, setting the title, and that's something that you should do. Add a title to the bar instead of having that. What do I have? I have the boring blank title bar. You should have a title bar there. Great to have your name or your team name there. The container is the content pane of the JFrame. So this .getContentFrame gives me my container. And to determine how things are laid out, the grid layout is assigned as its layout. Very much like the example in the book. I create a grid layout, and let's see here. Why is this data labels length plus 2? Remember, this parameter here is a number of rows in my GUI, because I have an additional label at the top and the button row at the bottom. It needs to have a length of however many labels I have, plus a row for the top and plus a row for the bottom. That's where the plus 2 came here. This means there's 2 columns of data. 1, 2. It's the left and right columns. Column 1, column 2. Now this will all, if I add just the right number of elements, that will all appear correctly in that grid layout. So I'm making sure to add a label title. And if you had watched me build this code, I wasn't doing it exactly this order. I realized after I created a bunch of labels that they weren't getting put in the right spot because it needs that extra label. Even though I don't care to have anything in that cell right there, I had to add something there, or the grid layout wants to add left to right, and I'd get labels appearing here and text fields here, and it was coming out wrong. So adding that, just a blank label, and I put a comment there, I need to put something in that top right cell. Here's the main loop that one by one is creating my data labels based on the length of my string up here, data labels. I go through a loop, creating a temporary label. Remember, because labels, I never need to access their data after I've created it. I can have a temporary label here. Because I want to do more than just put the label up on the screen, I want to also set its horizontal alignment. That's why I'm having a temporary label object. So I can create one as well as call set horizontal alignment. Remember, this string swing constants dot right basically controls my horizontal alignment. And once I've created that label, I add it to my container remembering that it has a grid layout, I create a text field that is stored in an array, so when my action listener button click happens, I can get at what's been typed into that text field with the .getText method. And I'm giving it a default width of 20 as I create that text field. Once the text field has created, remember it will not show up until I add it to my container. See how I also added the label to the container. Alright, so now that's the top row, and then all of these. And then what's left to do is add that button, and then we'll look at how we get that action to happen when I click that button. So there's the creation of my button. The order of adding and then adding an action listener actually could be different, but notice up here, rather than in my constructor, I just define my class as a button store. It's given a new button because I know I'm going to have that button for any time I create this my GUI. You could have created button store and then down below in the constructor say equal new button, new J button. I decided to put that up here since I know what's going to go in there at the point where I'm saying I want to have a J button variable. So knowing that it already has a text on it, it's been created, I do need to now add an action to happen when I click on that button. If you're building the GUI, at this point you could leave that action listener blank and leave that to your teammate to put the code into the action listener, unless you know what, and discussing with your colleague what to put in, what happens when that button gets clicked. But this creates the button. This makes the button ready to handle the click. If you didn't have this add action listener, the button would still appear on the screen, but nothing would happen when you clicked on it. And in order to make everything show up on the screen, I have to do the this.revalidate, and of course I want it to show, so I have set visible equals true. So at this point, this is the code that actually will cause the GUI to appear and have all the elements in it. And remember down in main, this is what actually creates and displays. So let's go ahead and put that display the GUI. Now I'm going to stop there. This video is available for you to review and take a look at the code. I'll make a link available to you on UD Online.